For this example, where we have an arrow with rounded flags below, we're going to use a few different techniques. One is going to be this selective rounding of corners. Another one is going to be getting this nice gradation of colors, and then we're making a triangle for the end of this arrow. So let's go ahead and start with the flags. We're going to start with rectangles because we don't have a shape that's rectangles that are just rounded on the bottom. Use my rectangle tool to drag out one of these rectangles. Now let's go ahead and make the copies. As long as we're here, I'm going to go to my regular block selection tool. I'm going to hold down Option on the Mac, Alt on the PC to make a copy as I go. Let go. Do this again to get 4 of them in a row. All right. So now, whenever we select one of these rectangles, you can see in newer versions of Illustrator, we've got these circles that are inside of the corners. Now these are for rounding the corners. I can do this to the whole rectangle by dragging these up. I can make them very rounded or just slightly rounded. It's a really nice way to have fine control over the roundedness of your corners. And you can actually do this on any corners. But what if we want to do that to only the bottoms? You can see in our example, the tops are still square. All right, so I'm going to take these to get that control over which corners get rounded. We need to select with this white direct selection tool. Now, any corner that we pick, we see one of these controls shows up, and we can round one of those just by itself. But we want to do these all exactly the same, all at once for efficiency, so I'm going to hit undo there. What I can do in this case, because these nodes are all in a line, is just use the white direct select tool to select all those bottom nodes. Now I'm just going to drag all the way up until I get a half circle there on the bottom. And now I've got very quickly my rounded flags. For the colors, I'm going to, I could use the color controls and go over to the color palette. And instead of using RGB controls, I always recommend that you pull down to HSB. Sorry, that went off the screen a little bit, but HSB allows you to take these colors. I could take this, say this one's my base color. I can just control the brightness or the lightness of this color. I can make this one slightly darker. I could make this one slightly lighter, and this one slightly lighter again from that one. And I can get this nice dark to light with the same hue and saturation. Instead of that, though, I'm going to use something that was also introduced more recently. It's called the color guide. So if I go up to here, you can see there's whole palettes of shades and tints of color within these certain palettes. This one's was picked by default. So if I select one of these, I'm going to select a dark blue. I'm going to go to these, and in a row, it has these nice transitions of different color. And now I've got these 4 blues that go together, but they're just going from dark to lighter to show a transition. I think I'm actually going to go 1 shade lighter with that. All right, now the last part is to do our arrow. You can see the base part of this is just a rectangle. So I'm going to use my rectangle tool and create the main part of this arrow. Hold that down. Let me change the color to a gray. Now I want to make the head of that arrow, and that's just a triangle. If I hold down on the rectangle tool, I get these other selections. One of them is a polygon tool. The polygons will have many sides to it. This one has 6 sides by default. If I want to change the number of sides, I'm going to hit the arrow keys to scroll through number of sides, to go up, go more sides, down, until the triangle is the last one. It's 3 sides. It's the least number of sides on a polygon. Now I want this thing to align really nice straight up and down on the edge. So I want to press Shift to constrain it. Now the only way that it can make a triangle holding down Shift is to have the bottom flat. So we're going to have to rotate this eventually. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and transform this. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to make it flatter because we want our arrowhead to be a little shorter than that. Now when you hover over the outside of these control points on the corners, a little rotation indicator shows up that lets me rotate it around, and I can hold down Shift to constrain to nice angles. Let go of that, drag it over, and we can see it gives me indicators when I'm centered on it and when I'm intersecting. And now I can just change this shape however I want to make it nicer, proportions with the rest of the rectangle. If I hold down Option while I resize, it'll do it around the center instead of one of the endpoints. So I can stay centered, go a little bit smaller. I'm going to squish this down a little bit, and there, I like that proportions for my arrow.